Hello everyone, I'm Soma Mazumdar.
And I'm Orod and welcome to Kanban Lab podcast. In each episode, we'll pick a common question and dive into a different aspect of Kanban, exploring its principles, practices, and applications, and answering that question.
Our goal in this podcast is to demystify Kanban and help listeners understand how it can benefit their teams and organizations through addressing the common misconceptions, clarifying concepts, and answering questions about Kanban.
Hi, Soma. How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm very good. It's a beautiful Saturday in Melbourne. How's everything in Sydney?
Yeah, Sydney is also sunny and good. But on the other hand, I'm feeling a little bit cold. So that's a Soma problem, not the weather problem. So
All right. So, do you have any hot topic to talk about that might warm you up as well?
yeah, actually I do. And this was a question was asked by one of our listener of the
Mm-hmm.
podcast. And I can definitely take their name, Chris. So Chris, I met Chris in Agile Oz, and he did ask this question that can we do Kanban without Kanban board? So what do you think? Can
Okay, that's a very interesting question.
Yes.
So what is the definition of Kanban board? Do you know what he referred to as a Kanban board?
I believe it also went back. So to give you some context, how this question even originated, there was
Mm,
a LinkedIn post, I believe, a few months back, or it would be like, yeah, a few months back, where someone was referring to that, like Kanban boards are not enough. Like, why people are so fussed about it? How can that help? What is the metrics we are using to understand that if Kanban boards are effective or not? So there were a lot of comments going on. And on one of those comments, actually, I was tagged. And so I just mentioned that Kanban board is a tool. And like any tool, you can always use it to serve a purpose. So in this context, Kanban board could be very amazing tool to understand that what's the capacity available and can you pull in more work. So you do have to always configure the tool to serve those purposes. So based on that LinkedIn post and comments, when I met Chris, there was this question because everyone always talks about Kanban board, and what they understand is that it's just those columns that we keep seeing
mhm.
in Jira. So that's the whole definition of Kanban board that people do understand. And the idea is like, or the question is that, can you do Kanban without Kanban boards? So the definition would be, I believe, that
So, the whole point of using a Kanban board is, as we explained it, I think, in last few episodes, is to visualize what work do we have and how these works go through the system from the beginning until done. But visualization of work and the workflow has a purpose, right? So we visualize it to see how many work we have, make sure we're not overloaded, and also track how long, it took from beginning until end, and then what we can do to improve and optimize the system and stuff like that. So that's the purpose. Um, if you ask me, I would say if you don't visualize your work and the workflow, then you don't get the benefit that Kanban has, and then then there is no point really to even use anything else. Yeah, I'm not sure how to explain it, but it's you know what I mean. So if you don't want to optimize your flow, if you don't want to balance between your demand and capability, then why do you even need
need to,
to
yeah.
use Kanban? You know what I mean? So my answer would be probably you don't get the benefit of Kanban. Of
Yeah.
course, you can use other principles of Kanban. Uh, and also another thing is um, the definition of Kanban, right? Kanban means signal. If you don't
Yes.
visualize your work, if you don't visualize your workflow, then how you can see this signal on your board to tells you that you have capacity or the work is blocked or you have a bottleneck and those kind of things. So I would say my quick answer is probably no.
Okay. So I would like to differ a little bit in here. And
Mhm.
it is not about the visualization practice, though. It is about the board. So if you go back to the question is, can you do Kanban without a Kanban board? Now, as we all know, there are different, probably hundreds of ways to visualize all
True.
the things that a Kanban actually shows you. So for
Mhm.
example, let's say, whenever you are building or like creating a Kanban board, you're designing a Kanban board, you want to see few things. The first one is that what is the work that's coming to your system? And do you have enough capacity or capability to actually pull that work and do it? Also, at the same time, you want to visualize that, okay, what are the different work stages the work goes through before it reaches the customer so that you can understand that where the delays are. Now,
Mhm.
that's a very advanced Kanban board we are talking about. Now, if we go back to the case study, which
Mhm.
is in the blue book of Microsoft XIT, when they started with like applying Kanban practices and principles in their team, they didn't have a Kanban board, and it still worked because they could visualize the capability or the capacity because they were using Visual Studio, I believe. I could get the name wrong, but they were using a tool which will do the same thing which we would like to have from the board, like the informations from the board.
Yeah.
Now, again, going back to the why and what we are trying to achieve from the board. If you
Yeah.
have a tool which is telling you when there is a capability created to pull more work, that is always the first step so that you are not overburdening the system and you understand that, okay, there is a capacity, we can pull in something to, get the flow going.
Yeah,
So
but what you explain is the Kanban board. So they visualize the work, they know the capacity, they know
yeah,
the flow, and they visualize it. So that's a Kanban board.
now that's where I believe the confusion comes from, because when we say board and Kanban board, people usually mean the board that we see with just columns.
Well, I
And
think this is a new, probably not new, but because now we have more powerful tools to create the workflow, so everyone use it. But um, you know, I actually started doing Kanban at school with student, primary school student, right? And we visualize their task and the whip limit in a very interactive way, so we can engage children, right? For
mm,
them, it doesn't really, work limits, whip limits, and stuff like that doesn't really make sense. And I can actually screenshot their board and maybe put it in the LinkedIn under this episode so people can look at it. But they basically they had three monster, for example, and they designed the story themselves, right? Some kids they come with a monster hunter game, something like that. So they have like three monster, and each basically monster is a task. So they need to, get the monster, which means when the task is done, and then they show the monster to the teacher, and teacher say, yeah, this is good, and you can, hunt another monster, or rather than monster, you can use Easter egg or whatever, right? But we limit the number of monster or limit the number of gift they can do it. So this is to me Kanban board. It doesn't have to be column. It can
exactly.
be in any sort of shape, um, as long as it sends a signal to say you overloaded, you don't need to work on anything else, you have enough work to do.
Yeah.
That's the Kanban board.
Yeah, I mean, I do agree with you there, and I understand. And at the same time, we need to make sure that everyone is on the same page, whoever is listening. Because
Hmm.
when I got this question, the idea of a board was totally different than what we are talking about at the moment. And again, to give you an example, sometime I believe that visualization is very subjective,
Hmm.
because not everyone gets the same signal from the same kind of visualization. And even I realized it a few weeks back. I was actually facilitating a session at work, and I wanted everyone to visualize that all the items that are there, and we want to prioritize it. So I proposed that, hey, maybe we can have it in a like matrix, 2 by 2 matrix based on value and impact. And then we can move it around, like based on everyone's agreement, that if they agree that if some item is like a highest value or highest impact, it could go to the top rightmost quadrant and stuff like that. And someone mentioned that not everyone thinks that that is going to be impactful. For some people, having all the information in an Excel is even more impactful, and more like it helps them to visualize that where the work is going and how to prioritize it. So I believe that is also something that everyone needs to keep in mind, that it's not about just putting in one solution to solve all kind of problems. Visualization, when it talks, the one of the practices of Kanban, where the board came from, and all this comments on LinkedIn and everything is happening, it's all going back to the practice, one of the 6 general practices, where you need to visualize how. Kanban University or even Kanban practitioner are not going to prescribe that how you should be visualizing, but whenever or whatever way you visualize it through, you should always keep these things in mind, that one of this is like it should send you a signal, which you already spoke about, Orod, in like before, that that's what Kanban translates to. So
Hmm.
for some people, maybe Excel is doing that in their own
Yeah.
way. They are getting that signal out of it. So I believe that it's very subjective, that how you are visualizing. What do you think about that?
Yeah, so how they want to visualize it based on their need and their context is up to them, as long as it send the signal and limit the number of work. How they want to limit it, it's up to them. What signal means to them, again, it's up to them. But if you just have one big board with lots of card on the, on this board, then that's definitely not a Kanban board. It's, I think David Anderson in his book also mentioned that this is a wall with lots of cards, right?
Mm.
And not a Kanban board. So there is a difference between Kanban board and a wall of cards, right?
Yeah.
uh, how they want to do it, it's up to them. But as long as it send the signal, it visualized, you overloaded, you underloaded, those kind of thing. Where are the bottlenecks, stuff like that. Then yes, you are Kanban, and that's a Kanban board. But if it doesn't tell you the story of what's happening in this team, then it's not a Kanban board.
Mm. And one other thing that I believe that we should also add to this, whenever we are visualizing, it is not only for the signal for the capacity, right? It is also signaling us the delays. Now, one of the easiest way that it always comes to our mind is that if we have all the different work stages out there, which are the dominant one, in a more visible form, we can actually see that how the work flows from starting to the end. And that will help us to gather enough information where we can think that, okay, how can we improve? How can we change something or get better? Now, when you do that in other tools, you always have to be mindful of that what tool you're using, and are you getting those informations as well? So when someone talks about this, that okay, I'm getting enough information if someone has capacity, but there's also like, and are you also getting all the other information, like for example, where's the risk? Do you
Hmm.
know whether the work will be stopped somewhere because you haven't thought about that stage in the workflow, that okay, let's say you have only one tester and 4 developers, so that every time it goes to testing, the tester is overburdened, and it just stucks there for a long amount of time. So the tool, any tool that anyone uses to visualize, maybe these are also the information they should be looking for, that whether, like, where the delays will be, or how can they smoothen the flow, because that's where the beauty of Kanban comes from. It's like continuous improvement.
Yeah. And another thing is depends who is using this board. If we have a individual board, right? So I have my own
Yeah.
Kanban board for myself. So I'm the only one look at this board. Then my Kanban board can be very simple. But if you want to visualize multiple teams or the entire organization, then yes, this Kanban board would be very, very complex. But again, to me, if we look at the Kanban board is not just the tools that you know we use it because because Kanban said it's a powerful tool, and in fact, to me, it's quite necessary if you want to focus on your flow of the work.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's not
It,
like, for example, Scrum that says, okay, if you don't want to visualize it, that's fine. You have a goal,
yeah.
achieve it. Do you want to use the board, not to use it? It's up to you, but the focus is the goal. In as Kanban point of view, I think these tools it's quite important.
It is absolutely very important. And on the other hand, it also brings the whole team together. Then it becomes everyone's responsibility to improve continuously. And what you mentioned here, about the Scrum team, is really powerful in there as well. Like, the Scrum team comes with a sprint goal, so everyone basically knows that what they need to do. But on the other hand, if you have a visualization, that makes it very explicit, that where the problems are happening on the way and how can we solve them together. So it is not only individual responsibility, it becomes a team's responsibility. So whenever you
Yes.
are thinking about,
Because in the Scrum, we always have a team. In
yes,
Kanban, we don't necessarily have a team. You might
exactly.
have a Kanban board for one person. You know what
Yeah,
I'm saying?
yeah,
Depends on the context and the maturity of organization. Scrum, it's different. You have a small team, the goal is clear to these 10 people, 7 people, whatever. So that, you know, do they want to visualize it or not? Do they want to use the tools or not? Doesn't matter as long as they collaborate.
yeah,
And that's the first value of Agile, right? Interaction over processes and tools. So interaction and collaboration between peoples has a higher value, more important than tools. But in
yeah,
Kanban, tools, it's important.
yeah.
If you have a small team, collaborate, all those kind of things, it's good. But if you know you are in the lower maturity that people don't see themselves as part of a team and they want to work on their individual goals, they still can use Kanban
Yes, they
and
can.
they can use the Kanban or they should use Kanban board.
And however, if you are visualizing your workflow in whichever tool it is, always remember it's gonna get you more benefit, because then you are trying to get optimize the whole workflow, not only your individual component. And that always helps people to collaborate even more. So in Kanban, we have different practices so that we can get the benefit of agility. So that's again baby steps. You can always start where you are, start with the individual Kanban board, tool, whatever you're calling it. But then your goal should be always that how can you get everyone together to improve on the way, how you deliver value to your customer.
Yep, good. So to summarize, because the question was, can we use Kanban without Kanban board? So I think we define the definition of Kanban board. So Kanban board is not just a board, it's powerful tools that show you how much work you have, where the work stock, and how the work flow through the system. Uh, Orod answer is no, you can't be Kanban without Kanban board. How you want to visualize it, it's up to you. It doesn't have to be in column. It can be anything as long as it tells you the story of what's happening, on the board. What is Soma's answer?
Uh,
Kanban without Kanban
after
board?
after we have defined what Kanban board means in real
Mhm.
sense, the answer is of course no, because it is not just a board. You can get the same benefit out of any tool that you're using, but it should give you always the visualization and all the information about how the work can be done better. So if you are getting that from any other tool, please go ahead and use it. But at the end, the goal is agility. That's
Mhm.
all everyone wants. So focus on that instead of like fighting over which framework is better or which board is better. There's nothing better or worse. It's always suiting your context. So
Yeah. And I think that's an interesting part of Kanban, and that's probably somewhere where Kanban practices and tools kind of violated Agile Manifesto, because
mhm.
in Agile Manifesto, people and interaction over processes and tools. In Kanban, tools, I'm not saying tools over processes and tools, tools over
Got it.
people
Yeah,
and interaction. But tools or Kanban board is the first step. And
yeah,
then Kanban board gradually over time increase the collaboration and encourage people to collaborate over time.
exactly. And one of the other thing, or I believe it's a good complement to Agile Manifesto. You know how? Because the principle in Kanban says respect people and manage work, not worker. So that is above all, if you think about it, all the practices and the values are talking about the same thing, that, hey, we have this, let's focus on the work because people are smart and we need
Mhm.
to respect them, we need to trust them.
Yeah,
So we don't have to manage people. Let's manage the work better. So it's a good complement to what we have in the Agile Manifesto.
cool. I think that's a very good point to finish today's episode. So today we talk about Kanban without Kanban board. We define what Kanban board means, and based on that definition, you can't be Kanban without Kanban board.
Yes.
All right. Thanks everyone for listening, and thanks Soma, and we come back next week.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Orod. See you.